Hello and welcome to the Best and Worst Pictures podcast. I'm your host, Jake, and with me, as always, is my good co-host, Ian.
Me, Ian.
And joining us, as per usual, is my other, all-right, co-host, Mud. How you doing?
That's better than usual.
What is this show, you might ask? Every week, the three of us idiots sit down and review a Best Picture winner over the past 100 years or so, and determine if it's one of the best or worst pictures as compared to the others. This week, we're discussing the sixth best picture ever, Cavalcade, from 1933. And to start us off, Mud has collected some fun facts about the film, which Ian and I have not heard ahead of time. Before you start, I would like to point out to the audience that Mud did tell us prior that, according to the facts, this movie sucked.
Oh, well, let's dive in with that.
Let's get it.
5.8% out of 10 IMDb, 64% Rotten Tomato critics, and I couldn't find an audience score.
Okay.
Yikes.
That doesn't sound that bad.
It was released on April 15th, 1933, though it had its debut screening on the 5th of January. I don't know why there was a gap. Couldn't find any information on that.
Is that another, is that how movies release late in the year and then
I don't know.
widely in the next year?
I don't know.
Because Oscar movies try and do that.
Yeah, but this was early in the year. It was a January release and then out for public in April.
Right.
It was released by Fox Film Corporation, which was a pre-runner to 20th Century Studios.
Sure.
It was directed by Frank Lloyd, who we have not seen the last of, gentlemen.
Yeah.
As he was the director of Mutiny on the Bounty.
Awesome. That's how I know his name.
Okay.
Also, this is my personal favorite fact. The year after this film, 1934 to 1935, he was the president of the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences.
I thought you were going to say, the president of some, political thing.
No, the only place he could have been president was Scotland, because
Wait.
he is Scottish.
Hold on. So the director of this movie that won Best Picture at the Academy used to direct the Academy?
No. Eventually, year after he won.
He will be. Okay. All right.
Yep. The film stars Clive Brook, who was in Shanghai Express, which was nominated for Best Picture, but lost to Grand Hotel last time.
Okay.
For fun facts about him, I just put no with a period.
Fair.
No fun facts.
Yeah.
That happens.
Lead actresses are Diana Wainward, who was also known for the 1940 film Gaslight, which is based on the play.
That's where
which
the
is
term
where
came
the term gaslighting came from.
Yep.
Yep.
Now, this is a deep pull, so follow me on this one. She was briefly married to Carol Reed from 1943 to 1947.
I think I know where this deep pull's going. But
You do
continue.
know, because he directs Oliver, which we'll be watching way down the line for the 1968 Best Picture.
Yep.
Right.
So over 20 years after he divorced, he directed a Best Picture.
Very
And
funny.
finally, Una O'Connor, which I hope is a familiar name to you two. She was in The Invisible Man.
Ooh.
We also have a returning actress. Beryl Mercer, who played Paul's mother in All Quiet on the Western Front, is in this film as a cook in the
Nice.
background. So she was in All Quiet. None of the lead actors are American, as I previously mentioned. This film was also one of the first to use the words damn and hell.
Hey, it's not going to be allowed when the Hays Code comes up.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that next round.
Yes, we will.
This is the last pre-code Best Picture winner, I believe.
Yep.
Jeez, that's
Either
so
this or the
soon.
next one. We'll get into the
Yeah, it
code
depends on when it
more.
comes out.
Yeah, I haven't talked about it yet because it hasn't been relevant. Once the code is really important, that's when we'll discuss
100%.
the effects of the code.
Mhm.
Now, this film was directed, as I mentioned, by Frank Lloyd. However, he wasn't the original director signed on. It was actually Frank Borzag,
Another Frank.
who had won Best Picture last year for Bad Girl, and he was the director of Seventh Heaven, which was one of the nominees for Best Picture when Wings won, one of the first Best Picture nominees.
They wanted more Best Picture nominees.
Yep. It won 2 other Academy Awards, including Best Director and Best Art Direction, which is now known as Production Design. Wainward was also nominated for Best Actress, but she lost to Katharine Hepburn. Transitioning to Oscar facts for this year, I've decided to branch out, diversify, get some facts about the...
Is it because there was not a lot of facts for the movie?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yep. I also want to do this more and talk about
Yeah.
what happened at the Academy. So Cavalcade is the 4th Best Picture winner to win Best Picture without a writing nomination.
That's cool.
That includes Grand Hotel, Broadway Melody, and Wings.
Mhm.
And it would be the last one until 1948.
Oh,
So
so like 15 years or
14,
so.
15 years. It was also the last film up until this year to be a double qualified film, meaning films were from the previous year and the current year, 1933 to 1930.
Kind of like what's going to happen in 2021.
Exactly.
Yep.
It also beat out, let me go down this list. It beat out 42nd Street, A Farewell to Arms, I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, Lady for a Day, Little Women, The Private Life of Henry VIII, She Done Him Wrong, Smilin' Through, and another film by the Fox Corporation, State Fair. Also, there's a very funny story from the Oscars that I want to share. So Will Rogers was the presenter, and he read off the Best Director nominations. And when he opened the envelope, he simply said, "Come up and get it, Frank," referring to Frank Lloyd.
Yep.
Frank Capra, another director nominee,
Oh,
came up and got the award.
shit.
Then they found out the snafu, so Frank Lloyd went to get it. So to make everyone feel okay, George Cukor, the last director nominee, got up on stage with them.
That is
funny.
amazing. I hope there's like a tape of that somewhere.
I don't think there is.
No, I don't
Damn.
think they televised the Oscars at that point.
Come and get it, Frank. Dude, 66.6 repeating percent of the nominees are named Frank.
That's amazing.
the
Also, the replaced director is named Frank.
That's funny.
Yeah. A lot of Franks in this one.
Too many Franks.
The moral of the story is that less people named Frank should direct movies.
Yeah, so that pretty much covers everything.
Yeah, the only other fact that I have straight from the Wikipedia page is it was the first film produced by Fox Film Corporation to win an Oscar. The Best Picture
Ooh.
Oscar.
Oh, that is true.
Good thing they lasted a really long time
Yeah, they're still going on today, right, guys?
Yeah.
in the form of a different studio.
I will add, I tried my best to find the Rotten Tomato audience score.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I found maybe 3 reviews for it that were above 3 stars.
Yikes.
This is based off the play, right?
It is based off of
Okay.
I'm skeptical.
Oh, I'm super skeptical. I know this is when I know nothing about something, I am not excited for it, obviously. And the fact that it's based off a play from the 30s and doesn't seem very interesting really
We've
gets
never
me.
watched 2 good ones in a row, and Grand Hotel was really good.
See, let me actually fire in. I like not knowing a damn thing about a movie and being surprised.
Me too.
I like not knowing, but at the same time, not hearing about a Best Picture winner from way back in the day, not hearing anything about it. If it's supposed to be a Best Picture winner, I think best movies of all time. Someone's going to be talking about it. Someone's going to mention something from it. I've literally heard or seen nothing.
See, last week I'd heard or seen nothing about Grand Hotel, but I still really liked it.
I only knew a little bit.
I knew nothing.
Yeah.
The only movie that we've watched for Best Picture so far that I've heard of is All Quiet on the Western Front.
All Quiet in Wings.
I knew about Wings. I knew a little bit about Broadway Melody.
Oh, I almost forgot. My Mary Pickford fact for the video.
Oh, God.
That's yeah, baby.
I didn't do one for the last one. I'm pretty upset with myself. Actually, it's pretty interesting. In 1933, same year as this film, on March 15th, was the release of the film Secrets, which was her last role.
Oh.
Yep. Fun
Pretty
fact.
cool. Well, let's see if this one deserved to be lost to time or not.
We finished Cavalcade.
Yes, we did.
And I do want to point out a fact that, well, what was her name? Fucking Una?
Una.
Una O'Connor. This got missed during the fun
Yes,
facts.
it's got Mr. the Fun Fact. Una was in Bride of Frankenstein as that annoying bitch that never shut up.
Yep, she had the exact same voice, and I heard it, and I sniped it, and I was like, oh my God, that's her. And I looked it up, and I was right.
I saw that she looked familiar, and I'm like, where have I seen this? And you said that. I'm like, yep, you're right.
It was the kind of thing where if it was in a movie, people would call bullshit on and be like, there's no way someone would remember that.
Yep.
Yep.
It was fucking hilarious.
Now, before we get into it, I just want to preface off the top with, look, this movie is so, in our 3 humble opinions, very unengaging, so we're probably not going to talk a whole lot.
It's very boring.
It's very boring.
I want to open up the discussion.
Okay.
From the get-go, I was like, man, this movie is starting off pretty slow. It starts off a little boring. And as the movie went on, I was like, 20 minutes in, nothing's really happened. 45 minutes in, nothing's really happened. Why is there a 9-year jump here? Why are they on the Titanic and nothing gets shown? Bro, I'm so bored. Why are we in this part now? This one scene is good. 1933! I was absolutely following along. That being said, over the 34 years this movie spans, none of it matters.
None of it. I really want to talk about the time jumps. I think this movie is
Egregious.
It calls itself like this epic, sweeping romance, blah, blah, blah. It's not. It is a collection of random little intervals at different periods in time. It's supposed to, but it doesn't feel like it builds on anything that's come prior.
Yeah,
it feels like a
everyone just kinda
collection of
dies.
scenes. Yeah,
This
yeah.
movie is worse Cimarron.
Oh yeah, this is the worst one.
I mean, quality-wise, sure, but it just wasn't like hilariously racist, so I don't know.
Hilariously operative word there.
Yep.
Dude, the only thing that this movie has is a cavalcade of issues.
Got
Funny,
'em.
haha.
Sounds like a real cavalcade. So the first third of this film, there's some young kids, and it's about them growing up while their father's away at war. And I made 2 notes, which is there's a fight. They have a fight on the balcony, and like their mom looks up at them or something. And I made 2 notes, and I said, there's no sound during the scene where the kids scuffle, so it's very awkward. There's no folly. There's no nothing. It's a completely silent scene.
Yeah.
And then the note I have under that is, I hate children.
I want to build off what you just said with the folly. The sound design of this movie suck.
Oh my god.
Dude, it's way too loud, way too quiet, non-existent. Like, it's very, very loud during that boat scene. Someone's like tugging the boat horn over and over and over again. Yeah,
I got something to say about it's not necessarily the sound design itself, but it played a factor. Those nonsense mishmash montages that kept showing up, especially towards the end.
It's I think it is supposed to be like trying to overwhelm the audience with all that is happening.
A
cavalcade of information. But it's nothing. It's nothingness. It's loud noise.
It's terrible.
I want to say, Ian, you are incorrect. The guy's not like tugging on it. He's just holding it.
Yeah.
He's just holding it down. It's just brrrr, and it's like a minute and a half. You're deafening those people on that cruise ship. Well, it wasn't a cruise ship. It was bringing soldiers south to the Second Boer War. But oh my lord.
And then after that, a little while later, there's a scene where they're at like a ball, and the dialogue in that whole scene is drowned out by the music. And it is like, and it's like, there are people talking. Just shut the fuck up.
I want to talk about 2 things I liked. They're the only 2. First one is that the opening song was a banger. I really enjoyed it. Really unfortunate that one of the things I liked was the opening of the movie. So therefore, by default, the rest of the movie is not nearly as
the
good.
first minute of the movie. Yeah, I love it.
Honestly, yeah.
Wow, so engaging.
But also, it ended with that yearly toast, the same way it started. I like that little poetic nature. I think that's...
Yes, because it's about the same family.
Right. If you're going to do it this way over this long time period, that's kind of the way to start and end the movie. That's an interesting way to do that.
I think it's good, but it could have been better.
Yep.
Because they don't really reflect on what all those years has meant.
Yeah, it just kind of does.
Also,
Yeah.
it's
Quick
unclear
montage.
if, like, I think it would have been more touching if they were like, oh, hey, you know, this is the first time we've done this in forever.
Yeah.
Like, to make us understand what the family's gone through, because they glance over a lot of what has happened to this group.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
a
yeah.
big thing that I want to get to, but I want to talk about some other stuff first. I made a note very early on when, at the very beginning of the film, just fake cuffs are fake, with parentheses, bad acting.
Oh,
The acting
yeah.
in this movie's terrible.
Yeah, it's not good at all.
I don't think there's a single good performance.
I'm gonna say I don't know how this movie won Best Picture.
Yeah,
It's really
why did
Yeah,
it win?
feeling that one.
What other dumpster fires were released where this was the winner?
Let me double check the list. I've got it here.
Little
I didn't
Women
recognize
was
them.
one of them.
What?
Little Women, 1933.
That's a good story. Unless the movie
Okay,
sucked.
yeah, but just because Little Women
Yeah.
base is great doesn't
True.
mean
True.
No, I know, but
Very
it's
true.
nominated.
best and
So,
worst.
That's one of the ones
Cavalcade.
I know.
It beat out, repeating from earlier, A Farewell to Arms, 42nd Street, I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, Lady for a Day, Little Women, The Private Life of Henry VIII, She Done Him Wrong, Smilin' Through, and State Fair.
I'm willing to bet that if we sat down and watched the rest of those nominees, Cavalcade would be towards the bottom of our ranking list.
Isn't 42nd Street like a classic?
I
Or is
don't
that
think
Miracle
so.
on
34th.
No, that's
Miracle
Miracle
on
on 34th. You're
Yeah.
thinking of, yeah.
But there's
I'm
no
gonna
way
look
that
up
this is like...
42nd Street.
How on earth is like this is the best out of those bunch?
I honestly, just the fact that the story of Little Women exists and I like the book, I would gauge that the movie would be better than this.
I just want to throw this out there. Cautionary glance. 42nd Street, 96% Rotten Tomatoes, 7.4 out of 10 IMDb, 83% Metacritic.
Cool.
Something tells me it's a better film.
I want to talk about the characters. I feel like they're one of the main reasons that this movie is not nearly as engaging and doesn't hold up. And I'll talk about more about it not holding up in a second. But
The movie starts off with Robert and Jane, and they're the parents of Edward, who marries Edith to have 2 Eds marry each other. Why don't you? And then Fanny. Those are the main characters. There are 5. I barely know anything about any of them.
There's also another son whose name I don't remember.
But he's not important.
Yeah.
let's
mostly.
get into
None
this
of them
too.
are important.
I'll
but-
tell that none of them are important. None of them talk in a way that isn't really frustrating. At least to me, anyway.
Well,
Maybe
that's just the English
maybe that's
for you.
subjective.
Yeah.
Maybe you guys really enjoyed the really.
No, it's
No.
annoying.
But it's
I-
just, it's
some of
really
these people
awful.
had some grating fucking voices.
Mhm.
There's like a serving woman.
That's the girl from Bride of Frankenstein.
Very, Very high-pitched voice.
Yep.
Like, it sucks because it's an interesting look at the life in this time period through the eyes of all these characters. I totally get that's the point of the movie. That's what the movie's going for. The problem is, these characters aren't diverse enough for me to care about each one. Everyone looks and sounds and even acts the exact same way as everyone else. They all go, well, how could you put a little over here? And then it's like, oh, I'm going over here. I'm going to do this. It's like, oh my God.
No diversity. Jake, these aren't fucking characters.
They're nuts.
Dude, the characters that aren't diverse and no one's fleshed out.
No.
Yeah.
There is... Okay, I want to go on a little soapbox. I have a whole thing written down. The problem with this movie is that nothing feels tense. You think of All Quiet and Wings, 2 other war movies. This is supposed to be a war movie.
It's kind of a mix.
So-
I would not call it a war movie.
It's a war drama. Say more towards drama, but if you think of those 2 other movies, they have these moments of real drama and tension with their interesting characters. Wings' characters are barely interesting, and they look like fucking the best written characters in the whole world compared to this. But nothing feels like it matters in this movie. It's all just talking.
So I'm going to counter what you're saying. The biggest problem with this film, in my opinion, is not the characters, but rather, okay, it is the characters, but for different reasons.
Okay.
Because this movie spans 34 years of English history,
Yep.
much like how Cimarron spans years of American history.
Mm-hmm.
The turn of the century, all the stuff that happened. And it's supposed to be about that. The film's called Cavalcade because it's a cavalcade of all these events that happen. But the problem is, we never see how it really affects the family. There's a scene that takes place on the Titanic in this
Eddie
film
and Edith.
Okay.
with Eddie and Edith. This scene is so poorly mismanaged, and I think
Oh my God, it's awful.
it is like a thesis statement for what's wrong with this film. First off, they introduce it by playing the Blue Danube Waltz,
Mhm.
which is like kind of an upbeat song,
That's a banger.
which is a weird song to play to introduce the tragedy of the HMS Titanic
Mhm.
or the RMS Titanic,
I think it was their RMS.
which, you know, is a living memory event
Yep.
at this point. 1933.
Mm-hmm.
The Titanic sank in 1912. Living memory event, like about 20 years ago. And you introduce it with
Bum, 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 bum. That shit slaps.
It's a good song.
But
It's
not
a good
for the
song, but
scene.
like you don't introduce that with that song, you know? It's like that scene. Have you guys ever seen that video of the opening to Saving Private Ryan set to Mr. Blue Sky?
Yep.
That video is fucking hilarious.
But
It's also,
wouldn't work.
yeah, it doesn't. The joke is it's something very tragic playing a very funny song.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot to say about that Titanic
But
scene.
more importantly, Eddie and Edith die on the Titanic. In the film, they don't directly address this. Blows my mind because up until this point, Eddie had been one of the most important characters in the film.
Because he's the only one really that that has a plot. I'm gonna put that in quotes. That carries over. Him and Edith both have a plot that carries over. So it's the last living memory of the main characters from the first part of the film that then transition to the second part, and then they die off screen, never get talked about, and then it swaps in characters.
Like, if you want to make this about how decades of events have affected this family, and you don't talk about how probably this is the biggest thing, I can't be on board with this film. I don't know why
No,
they
I
did
agree.
this. It's a pre-code film, so they can talk about tragic events.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that they just completely just glide right over the fact that two main characters, die in a very historical event and don't even talk about it. It would be damn near impossible for any film to come back from that.
No.
But with especially how boring this film is throughout, regardless of them dying, it tanks the film.
Yeah.
I'd also say that in line with what you're saying, you touched on a lot of those points, but something that also is in that exact same scene, they didn't show any of the Titanic crashing, which I get. You know what? It's 1933. King Kong looked like a stop motion man. I get it. You don't really want to spend all the budget to make Titanic sink. But the way they handled the scene, it's more of a scene where it's a reveal, quote, except for the fact that since we already know the year it's set in, well, as soon as that year came up, we were all like, oh, the Titanic's going to happen.
It was
Oh.
they show the exact date. I leaned forward and I went, "Wait, isn't that the day the Titanic sank?"
We went, yep.
And there's a ghostly cruise liner in the
Right.
in the background with 4 pipes, and I'm like, Yeah,
Right,
that's the Titanic.
So it's lining up with the event, and they're on the ocean liner. We as an audience and everyone in that damn theater, having removed 20 years from that event, should know immediately that that's Titanic. And they
Yeah.
play it off as if no one knows what's going on. And then at the end, after they're like, "Oh, I can't wait to sail fucking up my
Titanic,
ass,"
yeah.
yay! It pans over to something that says RMS Titanic, as in it's like a bum 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 reveal. Like we already know.
And then they just forget about it.
They forget about it.
Eddie and Edith saga ends.
Right. So
Which, by the way, not interesting in the first place. I wrote down they're terrible, boring characters.
again, but like
But still.
if you don't want to show the Titanic, I get it. Again, it's probably a lot of fucking money
I
to
think it's
represent
kind
that.
of more tasteful at the time to not
Fair. I'll totally
milk
give the
it,
movie
especially
that.
because it's not the point of the film.
I'll give it that. But A, like you were saying, it glossed over them dying completely. But B, more importantly, I feel, why even play it for this big reveal when A, everyone knows it just happened, B, it's fresh in everyone's memories relatively. It's like 20 years old at that
20
point.
years removed. I mean,
We're not
C,
even 20 years removed. We are
20 years
removed
removed
from 9/11.
from 9/11.
Yeah.
Right, this is their 9/11,
And you know,
basically.
you can show somebody a picture of like that day, and everyone's gonna be like, "Oh."
But doing it in that manner might be like the most, I would say, clueless way to handle it.
there's a film equivalent to this actually. I don't remember what it was, but it's a romance film with Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, I know what you're
and
talking
the
about.
final reveal is that he works at the Twin Towers and is standing there in his office on 9/11.
Charlie St. Cloud.
Look up Robert Pattinson.
Is it
man.
the other one? Fucking. Remember me. There you go.
Same year.
Same year. That's why.
Whatever. The point is
That's why it got me.
You know what I'm talking about.
It was called Remember Me during 9/11, which was like Never Forget. It was called Remember
Oh
Me.
my
Never
god.
That's
forget,
fucking
remember me.
crazy.
So
Oh my
I
god.
My point, the comparison I'm trying to make is that movie's not about 9/11, but the reveal of that was probably such a shocking moment that that's what stuck with people. I can't see that not being like a moment for the audience to be like, oh my god, like they said something about it, you know?
So no, I'm gonna counterpoint. If you want to talk about how events do things with families, you have to show something. You don't have to show the boat, but you can show their graves. You can show something.
Yeah.
Show a mom grieving that she's
Yeah.
outlived her child.
Something. I feel like the way they did it is legitimately the worst way, and I can't excuse. Oh, it's too fresh. 20 years. It's bullshit. It's too fresh. Because 1917, the war, and World War I were talked about directly after, and those are worse historical events.
Yeah. Speaking of, let's talk about the later in the film when we get to World War I. And there's a very long montage where it was 1914 in the film.
Mm-hmm.
And then a title card pops up and it says 1916. And then it's maybe like a minute and a half, 2 minutes of all that noise that we've been complaining about and just overlaid imagery. And then it just says 1918.
No, that is the best scene in the movie, for one. I will say I actually really, really like that scene. It starts with 1914, and it starts showing marching, young faces like kids, like 15, 16, I think,
Right.
even younger at some points. And then it went 1915. And then it was still war, death, destruction, 1916. Same thing, 1917, 1918. It went through all of World War I while doing the montage of young faces, young naive people, soldiers marching, people dying, and like bombings and stuff, like the plane bombings.
Okay.
And I think that is so fucking interesting and an awesome way to show the passing of time through the war. Because, okay, I want to talk about every single one of these movies goes, oh, World War I, that'll only be like 3 months long. Fucking hilarious. Like in retrospect, that is the funniest thing.
It's
So-
like you know what the phrase for World War I is, buddy? The war to end all wars.
Yes, but in retrospect, they're like, dude, it'll only be like 3 months. We're just gonna join.
Builds on the fucking funny, the hilarity of it, of this like just this irony. You know who coined that term actually? H.G. Wells.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It
Yeah.
was longer than that and got a sequel a few years later.
Yeah,
That was
The
amazing.
sequel directly spawned from the original.
So-
Right.
He goes, oh, the scene before that, about 10 minutes before the overlay scene, he goes, I'll join. It'll only be a couple months anyway. And then it goes 1914, 1915, 1916, 1917, 1918.
The thing is, though, that's exactly what the thought process at the time was, because everyone thought that they were so civilized now, and there hadn't been a big war in Europe in decades. So they
Yep.
were like, oh, this will be just a couple months of a skirmish,
Quick
really.
skirmish. Yep.
And then it turned into one of the greatest tragedies.
That is why I think that's the best scene in the movie.
Okay, I will admit, I must have missed some of that because I was taking notes and writing down my thoughts.
Understandable.
On it. So I only saw 1914, 1916, 1918. So I was confused as to why it skipped every other year. I will rescind my criticism of that moment.
I think that scene is the only scene in this movie that works. And this movie's 2 hours long. And I think that 5-ish minute sequence is the only scene that's good.
Guys, I know this might sound weird, but I have another problem with the movie.
Oh,
Wow,
oh.
Yeah.
I just said only one scene was good. You have a problem?
Yeah, the movie Cavalcade might have an issue for me. There are so many fucking scenes of people just singing that add absolutely nothing to the
Dude,
story.
There's an extended opera house scene at the beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
To really quick gloss through it. The husband, Robert, is sent away to fight in the Second Boer War.
Yep.
And the wife goes to the opera to take her mind off of it. And then they come in and they announce that the Second War is over. And he returns home safe and sound and he gets a knighthood.
And the queen's dead.
And the queen dies. That's later, though.
Yeah, so the next scene. But
It's like the next scene. But the point is, the opera lasts like 4 minutes.
dude.
And then they
it's
just
so-
announce the war's over. What really pisses me off about that is that's all within, I would say, the first half hour of the film,
Yeah.
I think, right about there.
Maybe 35 minutes.
Maybe 35 minutes. And it's like, it's a whole plot of a movie of like this wife has to deal with the fact that her husband's going away to the war. And I should also add the poor people that work for them. The husband of one of their workers is also going into the war. And
Yep.
it's like, wow, this could be a really interesting story that parallels the stress that these two women are going under, even
Yeah.
though the rich lady's husband is going in as an officer and the poor lady's husband is going in as infantry.
Yep.
You know, like that's a good movie right there. And then they both come home fine. One of them gets a knighthood, and then the poor guy decides to open his own business. Then he turns into a drunk. Then he dies, and then his daughter becomes a famous singer.
Yep.
And that's the plot of the movie.
The only the plot of the movie
Changes
changes twice. It goes from the dad to the kid to the Fanny,
to Fanny.
and none of it.
It doesn't
It's
flow.
all connected, but none of it flows. I was just about to say that.
So,
Like it's just so awkward.
It's like as if you made a film about Jake's dad, and then like 40 minutes in, you switch to it being about Jake.
But you never established Jake and his dad ever interacted at all.
Yeah. And then 40 minutes after that, you switch to your sister Allie because they
For
work
no
together.
reason. Yep.
okay, so I just read something. This might have been in the fun facts, probably, but it left my mind if it did.
It's all right. It's been a
It's
while.
based
since we
on a
recorded.
play, right?
Yes.
That would totally fucking explain why that Titanic scene was the way it was. Except even still in that play form, it still would have been like kind of offensive in that sense. But even still, them just being actors walking around talking like hippity-dippity, can't wait till whatever, and that's like, oh, Titanic, oh no. That makes so much more sense if it's a play.
Oh, no,
Can I just say, if you're in imagine you're in a theater to see a play,
Right?
and theaters are big, you know, especially in the 1900s, like
Yep.
early 1900s, theaters are
Huge.
huge because that was like a really big form of entertainment.
that was the form of entertainment.
Yeah. So you've got like balconies, right?
Mutiny on
Imagine how big the lettering on that life preserver would have to be so that everyone can read that it's the Titanic.
It's a sign.
The tube's probably like taller than them, and they have to like stretch out to cover it so that the reveal happens.
Oh
You
my
know what?
god.
This movie feels like a play, and I know
Not
that
in a good way.
I know that shouldn't be a bad thing, but it's in the sense of this doesn't feel like cinema.
I know. And we can criticize as much as we love Dracula and Frankenstein, they feel like plays, you know?
Yes, but there are cinematic elements to both those movies that make it
Yep.
And there's
amazing.
good ways to do a play in a movie. Grand
Mhm.
Hotel feels like a play.
And, you know,
Glenn Ross feels
feels
like
like a play.
Yep.
It's based off a play.
Yeah.
Mud, you mentioned the poor family, and the rich family both have people going to the war together. They could have done like a Grand Hotel class thing.
There's so much room to talk about class in this film because
Yeah.
the rich family is obviously rich, and then Fanny's family has to struggle and work to survive, you know? It gives Fanny a hint of a character when she starts to become like a famous singer,
Mm-hmm.
but it never brings it anywhere.
Yeah. And there's a second theater scene halfway through this
There's
movie.
several theater
Yeah,
scenes.
there's like 15. Well, not that many. I'm being hyperbolic. They don't add anything.
There's a lot of stuff in this film that goes nowhere. Early on, I remember this really set the tone for us. There's a scene right after they say goodbye to their husbands and they're walking away. A woman just fucking faints.
Yep.
And then
that's-
they walk away. There's a lot of repeated transitions too. I don't know if you noticed that. There's one of like horses going downhill. They
Yep,
used that a
yep,
couple
yep, yep.
times. It's a movie that feels like it's really trying to pull itself together, but it's struggling to break out of the confines that it is used to being theater.
Yeah. It does that really shitty cliche thing that a lot of old movies do. Not even cliche, fucking weird stalker shit. Where the person who ends up falling in love with Fanny, he's in her room watching her get naked and dress. And she's like, "Oh, you're so handsome."
True fucking
I hate
love,
this
man.
shit.
Remember the Grand Hotel?
Yes.
When he's like, I just come in here when you're not here. Oh, I'm so in love with you.
It's so weird.
Yeah, high
How do you
security.
ever like anybody? Well, I can't say that. I'm horny. I was about to say if I went in my room and someone was watching me change and like, "You're just so hot," I'd be like, "That's weird."
The basis of their romance is she is a woman and he is a man.
Yep. That's the baseline, and that's as deep as it goes.
Yeah.
This movie is so surface level. It's like a topography map. It's just the surface.
It's a real cavalcade of just events.
Fuck.
Got 'em.
We keep doing that.
Fucking roasted.
I disabled Ian with that one.
Dude, this whole review is us just saying there's a cavalcade of problems.
It is. I will compliment the movie though. There's one interesting transition, and it's when they transition to 1909 and they write in the sand "important people of 1909," and then there's actually really highly detailed portraits of them in the sand.
Yeah, it's
It's
neat.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then it
Roosevelt.
transitions into the actual scene.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right. And then every other scene, it's just like B-roll in 1918,
Yeah.
1923,
No,
19
it's
whatever.
really-
No one fucking cares.
It's just not impressive. I didn't see anything technically impressive.
You're right. That's really where my brain's going, is there's nothing technically impressive in this film.
And the acting's not good.
Every other Best Picture up to this point,
I
I
can
think we've
see
been able
why.
to point to what really pushed it and cinema forward.
Yes.
This film doesn't feel that way.
That's a big
No, this
thing.
film feels like a regression.
That's a big thing that I always talk about is like, is this movie adding to the film conversation?
'Cause
Is this movie like advancing cinema to some
It's
extent?
not an amazing like drama in terms of like
There's no
acting.
drama.
It's not
Right.
an amazing work of acting like Grand Hotel.
Yep.
It's not a technical feat like Wings.
Or All Quiet.
It doesn't
or
have a
All
great
Quiet.
like theme. Is all quiet.
Yeah, All Quiet is it's the best one.
Yep.
But like I think those are the two main ways that you can advance cinema, either technically or dramatically.
Artistically, yeah.
Artistically.
And even Broadway Melody had some scenes where I was like,
And we've speculated on what else could have been.
yeah, the
in Broadway.
color scenes.
The
that
technical
were
scenes
missing.
absolutely could have been what put
Yep.
it over the
Yep.
top.
The same reason that Avatar 2009 got nominated. It was revolutionary technology.
CG.
Yeah. And a lot of that had never been done before,
Yeah.
you know?
Same reason Fury Road gets a nomination for Best Picture, you
For
know?
being one of the best movies ever created.
Also a technical marvel.
Right. Right, exactly. And sometimes being a technical marvel is enough to get nominated, and that's
Yeah.
okay. That's
I
an
think
okay
a lot
thing.
of people gloss over that sometimes.
Yeah,
that, like,
I've
a
heard
film
criticism of like, oh, this movie shouldn't have been nominated because it's just very, very bland and boring. But like, when you look at what it technically does, like an Avatar, for example, like sometimes it deserves to be, at the very least, as listed as one of the most interesting, influential, advanced movies that year.
If you have if you have two movies that are both enhancing things in different ways, Avatar being
a technical marvel.
a technical marvel, and what won that year?
2009,
I got it.
Slumdog Millionaire.
Oh, being a banger. General banger.
Being an amazing artistic expression.
Yes.
Avatar lost to Hurt Locker.
Oh,
Slumdog was
sorry, that was the year after.
year before. Yeah.
Super
year
good
before.
drama. All I've heard about that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, we get to watch The Hurt Locker.
We
Fuck
do.
dude, there are so many movies that have so many beautiful, amazing artistic things, or these awesome, cool advances in cinematography, or some of the best editing and directing we've ever seen. And this movie has nothing.
I can't find anything in this film that none of the best pictures before this didn't do better.
Even Cimarron did stuff better than this. It enchants the whole genre.
Cimarron defined a whole genre.
It
It
did.
defines the Western.
Mm-hmm. It might not be the first ever, but it's one of the earliest ones.
And it's one of the ones that got the most notoriety.
Right.
Yeah. It-
This movie remember when we were talking about how we've never heard of it and don't really know anything about it? That's fucking why. This movie didn't do anything.
There's nothing in this film that's worth keeping it around in the zeitgeist up until now.
This movie feels like a history class.
Guys,
Yeah.
with all of that like scathing scorched earth criticism, I want to get to out of 10s. What are you guys feeling?
I got one more thing I want to talk about.
Sure, throw it out
Absolutely.
there.
Something I noticed, just a little thing, right at the beginning of the movie, production crew was credited before the actors.
That's cool.
I think that's a good thing
I think that's awesome.
because they're the ones that actually made the movie as opposed to just acted in it.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that speaks to the fact that like the actors are still regarded as just like theater actors.
Breaking
Right.
news,
You know?
Jake says acting isn't important. We're 11.
that's the bad way to take that.
No, I just thought that was interesting that the crew, or at least part of the crew, obviously got I guess what would you would call top billing.
Yeah,
They went
right.
up before the
Right,
actors.
I agree. I mean, on the posters you market your actors, but in the credits you gotta give props where it's due.
I just thought that was cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
That's
I agree
really
with
all.
you.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
I felt kind of bad, and this is somewhat relevant, but during Avengers Endgame, you find out later, because it's 3 hours long, that they sped up the credits to fit barely 3 hours.
They sped it up because it was 3 hours and 2 minutes, and then it went down to 3 hours and 1 minute.
It's like, if I'm a VFX artist, I'm like, no, please keep the duration of my name flying up on the screen for half a second as long as possible, because it's barely there.
Yeah.
If I worked on that last like hour with all the fuckfest CGI going on, I don't know, I'd be kind of offended if I got sped up.
I agree.
Because I'm not even in the movie, and all my work is there, and I'd just be, I don't know. I feel bad about that.
Yeah.
For that, in that regard with Cavalcade, I'm glad that they did that first. It's pretty cool.
I liked 1 5-minute segment of this movie. 0.
Wow, that's your
The
zero.
first 0 of the
Damn.
best or worst podcast.
I can't say that this movie was engaging. I don't think the acting was good. It didn't bring anything to cinematography. There's no interesting shots. There's nothing. The character work isn't there. The sound quality is awful. It's like a brief 34-year history lesson that's not very in-depth, not very engaging, and
It's like a history book.
it's not even, because at least it would go in-depth. Like, this is like reading a high schooler's notes about a history book.
Yeah, you're right.
Like, I feel awful that I had to watch this. I feel awful that this won over other movies.
I'm trying to think about it, and like, do I want to give it a score that isn't a 0?
I'm
trying to think of, like-
feeling just very lost. A 0 is a film that gives you nothing the entire time,
right,
or is just so offensively bad and a waste of your life.
right.
I feel like I wasted my time watching this. And I know it's for this.
That's the thing is, if I'm able to give anything above a 0, it means I can point to at least one scene, one moment in the film where I'm like, they were on point thematically. There's good acting. There's great effects. You know, something that I can latch onto and be like, this is something that this film does amazingly or as good as other films.
And I'm the one who gives that 5-minute scene the most credit. The sound and editing during is terrible.
You know what, Mud? I think you just convinced me. 0.
Yeah.
This is the second 0 on the whole show.
I think
Ooh.
I've also convinced myself to give it a 0. We talked about how it doesn't do anything to advance cinema, and I think that's an important bar for a best picture.
It's either does something to enhance cinema or is a fucking bop.
I'm wondering. I think it's going to be the next 2, but I'm wondering when you guys think we're going to hit 2 good best pictures back to back.
Mutiny on the Bounty.
Yep.
What's after that?
Before that is It Happened One Night.
Okay.
I think that's going to be The Great Ziegfeld.
That was probably not going to be good.
No,
sorry.
I think it's going to be It Happened One Night to Mutiny on the Bounty.
Mutiny has Clark Gable.
So does It Happen One Night.
Oh, there's 2 Gables in a row. Of course they're gonna be good.
That's what I'm
I fucking
thinking.
love Clark Gable.
Hopefully.
Oh boy, I cannot wait. Clark Gable hasn't come up yet on this show.
Not yet.
I've been waiting, boys.
I've been waiting, too.
Trust me. Clark Gable will be a big talking point for us.
So, guys, my favorite one is still All Quiet on the Western Front, and my new bottom spot's Cavalcade.
Ditto and ditto.
Same.
All right.
Guys, we're so diverse in our opinions.
Just like the characters were in Cavalcade.
Hey, last week we were different. Grand Hotel, that's right. Okay, so for like 2 or 3 weeks, we were a little different because you thought Cimarron was the worst, but me and Ian thought Broadway Melody was the
Broadway
worst.
Melody sucks.
And now we have a contender that beats all of them in terms of worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, woo.
I just can't.
I will point out, though, we all give it 0s. I would not say this is offensively bad.
It's just boring. That is one of the worst crimes a film can do, is be boring.
At least with bad films,
You can laugh
you
at
can
them.
have that ironic enjoyment.
Like you with Suicide Squad.
The
Or
Room.
you with Daredevil.
The Room.
Yes.
Yeah,
I'm
The
telling
Room.
you, dude, that is one of the worst films, technically, ever.
Right.
But it is so funny that it is actually fun and good to watch.
I'm not a believer in the it's so bad it's good. I believe in it's so bad it's hilarious.
Yes, but that's good.
I'm really excited for It Happened One Night. I'm not even
Me
making
too,
that up.
actually.
I'm excited, but I'm still reserved because some things are overhyped. Guys, we will see you next time for hopefully a better movie.
We finna do this shit like this. It's like
There is not a single bad haircut in this movie.
I agree
agree.
completely.
Smoking every motherfucker that came in.
One of us said there's no bad hairstyles. That guy's, I submit.
Yeah, what, his Kodak black haircut?
Cruising down the street in my 6'4".
White people rapping like
That's so good.
What the fuck is so funny?
Dude, everything you just said. was fucking
Cruising
hilarious.
down the street in my 6.
Do it again, but rap good this time.
Let's say, hypothetically, for the sake of the argument, I was cruising down the street in my 6'4 Impala.
Would I not be gangsta gangsta? Am I wrong?
Cruising down the street in my 6.
Oh, it's even better than last time. Can you release a full official soundtrack of just him rapping like that for all of his songs?
Lying ass niggas in your pump